Most people walk into a room and tell you what they do. I'm a lawyer, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a coach. And in that one moment, they become just another title in someone else's mind. But the most impactful leaders, the most memorable people, they do something radically different. They don't lead with what? They lead with something deeper, something that makes people feel something. Today, I want to tell you why you should never tell people what you do and what you should say instead. Most people introduce themselves with what they do. I'm a financial advisor. I'm in real estate. I run a startup. We've been conditioned to think that our job title is the most important thing about us. But here's the truth. When you lead with what you do, you reduce your identity to a label. You become another box for someone to put you in, another category to mentally file away. And what do we do with boxes? We organize them, we stack them, we forget them. No one remembers the title, they remember how you made them feel. The problem with starting with what is that it skips over the most important part of who you are. It skips the reason you get up in the morning, the belief that drives you. The thing that actually makes people want to lean in and say, tell me more. When you tell someone what you do, their brain immediately starts to compare you to others in that field. Oh, you're in marketing? I know 5 other people in marketing. You've already blended in. But if instead you talk about why you do what you do, the mission that fuels you, you trigger curiosity, you invite emotional connection. Think about it. You meet someone at an event and they say, I'm a leadership coach. You nod politely and move on. But imagine if they said, I help people rediscover who they are when the world has convinced them to be someone else. That's not a title. That's a mission. That's something you remember. You don't just hear it, you feel it. The why is the heart of the story. It's the reason people follow you, believe in you, trust you. The what just tells people how you manifest it. The why tells them who you are. Let me give you an example. There's a difference between saying, I'm a teacher, and saying, I believe that every child deserves someone who refuses to give up on them. One is a job. The other is a cause. The job tells me what you do. The cause tells me what you believe. And that belief is what draws people to you, because we don't connect with people based on their job. We connect with people based on shared purpose. In fact, when you start with why, everything you say after that has meaning. It gives context. It gives life to your words. You're not just selling insurance, you're helping families sleep at night. You're not just building apps, you're simplifying people's lives. You're not just managing a team, you're shaping future leaders. That shift, however subtle, is everything. And here's the most beautiful part. When you speak from your why, you don't have to sell yourself. People feel the authenticity. They sense the conviction in your voice. You're not pitching. You're inviting. You're not convincing. You're connecting. Starting with why also creates alignment. It helps you attract the right opportunities and people because they're not drawn to what you do, they're drawn to what you believe. And when people believe what you believe, the relationship becomes deeper, more resilient, more meaningful. It's not transactional, it's transformational. So the next time someone asks, what do you do? Take a breath. Don't just rattle off your job title. Say something real. Say something that matters. Share the mission that lights a fire in you. Because people don't want another business card. They want something to believe in. And if you give them that, if you give them your why, you'll never be forgettable again. That's how you begin to lead without ever saying a word about your title. We live in a world obsessed with titles. CEO, founder, consultant, coach. The first question we ask someone new is, so, what do you do? And we answer with our job title, as if that single phrase defines the entire story of who we are. But here's the thing, titles are just labels. They're shortcuts. They give someone a category to put you in, a quick way to make sense of you. But they also limit you. They shrink your identity into a neat little box. And once you're in that box, it's hard to be seen for anything else. The moment we use a title, people stop listening with curiosity and start thinking in stereotypes. If I say I'm a lawyer, someone might assume I'm aggressive or argumentative. If I say I'm in sales, they might brace for a pitch. If I say I'm a therapist, they might hold back their emotions. Titles come with baggage we didn't pack, but baggage people project onto us. That's the danger of leading with what you do. You allow someone else's assumptions to define the boundaries of how they experience you. But something powerful happens when you don't lead with a title. When you lead with purpose, with belief, with values, you bypass the label. You don't give them a box, you build a bridge from your heart to theirs, from your story to their story. People may not understand your job, but they understand drive. They understand compassion. They understand the desire to make a difference. Those are things that don't fit neatly into a title, and that's what makes them powerful. Think about the people who've made a lasting impression on you. Was it because of their business card? Was it because of their credentials? Or was it because of something deeper, because of the way they spoke about their passion, their mission, their vision? The people we remember most aren't the ones who had the fanciest title. They're the ones who showed up with purpose, with clarity, with humanity. You could say you're a software engineer, or you could say, I help people spend less time on tedious tasks so they can focus on what really matters. The first one tells me your function. The second tells me your impact. And the truth is, impact is what people care about. It's what connects. It's what inspires. Now, that doesn't mean titles are bad. They're useful. They help us navigate organizational structures, but they should never be the leading edge of who we are. Because the moment we reduce ourselves to a title, we stop leading with authenticity. We start trying to fit the mold of that role instead of living the mission we were built for. There's a real risk in defining ourselves by our roles. Roles can change, titles can be taken away, jobs can end. And when they do, if our entire identity was tied to that label, we feel lost. But if you lead with who you are and why you do what you do, then no matter where you go or what changes, you still carry your purpose with you. It travels with you. It grounds you. It guides your decisions, your conversations, your connections. And let's be honest, when we lead with purpose instead of position, people listen differently. They lean in. They don't just hear the facts, they feel the story. They see themselves in it. They don't walk away saying, she's a VP of marketing. They walk away saying, she really believes in helping people grow. That's a bridge. That's a spark. That's how influence begins. So when someone asks what you do, ask yourself a different question. What do I want them to remember about me? Because if you give them your title, they'll remember the box. But if you give them your purpose, they'll remember the connection. And people don't follow boxes, they follow bridges. When we introduce ourselves by what we do, we often fall into the habit of letting our role speak for us. But the truth is, roles don't speak, titles don't feel, job descriptions don't inspire. People do. And what people respond to, what truly moves them, is not the function you serve, but the values you live by. Think about it. Every job, every career, every business is ultimately just a vehicle to express something more meaningful, something that's rooted in who you are. You can have two people doing the same job side by side, using the same tools, working on the same project sand, yet one of them makes people feel safe, heard, and inspired, while the other just gets the job done. The difference isn't skill, it's not experience, it's values. It's how those values show up in everything they do. When you lead with your values, you give people a sense of what matters to you, even before you explain what you do. You communicate trust, authenticity, conviction. And when that happens, people don't just hear your words, they believe them. You might be a doctor, but if you show people that your true value is compassion, they don't just see a medical professional, they see a healer. You might be a business owner, but if your value is service, they won't just see someone trying to make a profit, they'll see someone trying to make a difference. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Leading with values makes your work personal, and when your work is personal, it becomes powerful. Because now it's not just about tasks or goal sets, it's about identity. It's about aligning who you are with what you do, and that's where real leadership begins. I've met people who have told me their title, and it went in one ear and out the other. But I've also met people who've said something simple like, I believe every human being deserves to be treated with dignity, and I was hooked. I didn't need to know their job to know I could trust them, because they were already showing me what kind of person they are. The irony is, people spend so much time trying to craft the perfect elevator, pitch something clever, impressive, sharp. But the most effective thing you can do isn't to impress people, it's to move them. And the fastest way to do that is through your values, because values resonate. They create a sense of belonging. They tell others, this is what I stand for. This is what you can count on me for. When we rely on titles, we're asking people to understand us logically. But when we share our values, we invite people to understand us emotionally. And emotions are where trust lives. Emotions are where relationships are built. People don't follow you because they understand your resume. They follow you because they believe in what you believe. Even in conversations, especially, in conversation sits the values that spark depth. It's not, I'm in tech. It's, I believe in making technology more human. That's a conversation starter. That's something people can connect to, even if they have no idea what line of work you're in. Because values cross industries, roles, and titles. They're the universal language of connection. And here's something else. When you lead with values, it creates alignment. You attract people who share those same values, and you repel the ones who don't. That's not a bad thing. That's clarity. That's how you build the right teams, the right partnerships, the right audience. Not because of what you do, but because of what you believe. The goal isn't just to be successful in your career, it's to be consistent in your character. That means bringing your values to every room you walk into. That means choosing to let integrity, empathy, courage, whatever yours may be, speak louder than your title ever could. Because at the end of the day, no one is inspired by your job description. They're inspired by your conviction. There's something deeply human about wanting to be understood. It's wired into us the need to connect, to be seen, to be known. And yet, when we start conversations by saying what we do, we often build a wall without even realizing it. We think we're giving people information, but we're actually giving them conclusions. We're skipping the part that matters most, the story. When you tell someone your job title, they immediately start forming a picture based on their own experiences, their own biases, their own assumptions. That's not understanding. That's projection. And the more we rely on those labels, the more we rob others of the chance to truly know us. We rob them of the chance to hear what we care about, what drives us, what makes our work meaningful beyond a paycheck or a promotion. But something different happens when you choose to share your story instead. Not the polished bio, not the LinkedIn summary. I'm talking about the real story, the journey, the moments that changed you, the values you discovered, the reasons behind your choices. Because when you share that part of yourself, you're not just transferring information, you're creating connection. People don't connect with perfection, they connect with honesty. They connect with the person who says, I used to chase success, and then I realized I was losing myself. Or, I thought I had to prove myself until I learned that leading is about serving, not impressing. That kind of vulnerability is rare, but it's powerful. It invites others to open up too. It gives them permission to be human. And when we lead with our story, something else happens. We give people context. We let them understand not just what we do, but why it matters to us. We create a lens through which they can see our work as an extension of our purpose, not just a job. That's where true understanding begins. Now, this doesn't mean you have to share your deepest secrets every time you meet someone. It simply means choosing to lead with something real, something that gives people insight into what you stand for. That might sound like, I've always believed that everyone has potential, even if they can't see it yet. That's why I do what I do. That's not a job description. That's a window into your world. And people don't forget windows like that. What's interesting is that the more you share your story, the less you'll feel the need to prove yourself. Because when people know where you're coming from, they begin to see your work through that lens of purpose. Your credibility grows not because of the title you carry, but because of the clarity and sincerity you bring. That's how trust is built, not through credentials, but through connection. This is especially true in leadership. If people only know what you do and not who you are, they might follow your direction, but they won't follow you. Leadership isn't about control, it's about influence. And influence begins the moment someone feels seen by you and sees something in you worth believing in. Stories do that. They stick. They linger in people's minds. They make you more than a name or a role. They make you a voice, a presence, a person with a point of view. And here's the beautiful part: your story is uniquely yours. No one else has lived it. No one else has learned what you've learned in the way you've learned it. That's your power. That's the part that breaks through the noise and helps you stand out without ever needing to shout. So when someone asks what you do, don't rush to answer with a title. Pause. Think. What do you want them to really know about you? What's the moment, the belief, the lesson that shaped you? Share that, because that's what they'll remember. That's what will make them lean in. That's what builds understanding. Because people don't remember what you said you do. They remember who you made them feel you are. One of the most profound things we can learn about human behavior is that people are always looking for meaning. We all want to feel like what we're doing matters, like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And yet, we often miss the opportunity to communicate that meaning not just in our work, but in how we present ourselves to the world. When you tell people what you do, you're sharing data. You're offering the surface. But when you share why you do it, you're giving them something to believe in. And belief is what creates movement. It's what creates loyalty, engagement, action. People don't get behind data, they get behind purpose. This is why great brands don't sell products, they sell beliefs. They don't just say, here's what we make. They say, here's what we believe in. And if you believe what they believe, you're far more likely to join them. That dynamic doesn't only apply to brands. It applies to people, to leaders, to teams. When we lead with what we believe, we give others a reason to care, a reason to listen, a reason to follow. That belief becomes your anchor, your compass. It gives direction to your choices, your behavior, your message. And when people sense that kind of alignment, it creates clarity. They're not guessing who you are. They're not trying to figure out your intentions. They see it. They feel it. That's how you cut through the noise, by being anchored in something real and consistent. If someone asks, "What do you do?" and you reply, "I'm a project manager," it's fine, they'll nod politely. But if you say, "I help teams stay focused on what really matters so we can build things that serve people, not just check boxes," suddenly it's not about a task anymore. It's about a belief. It's about something you stand for. That's the kind of response that makes people want to know more. Not because it's clever, but because it's clear, because it reveals what drives you. Belief gives your work emotional weight. It's the difference between building software and believing in simplifying people's lives, between managing people and believing in growing others to their fullest potential, between selling a product and believing in helping someone solve a real problem. The belief is what elevates the work. It gives it context. It gives it soul. And this matters even more when you're trying to inspire others. Because people don't want to just hear what you do, they want to know why it matters to you. If you don't believe in what you're doing, no amount of explanation will convince anyone else to care. But if you do, if you genuinely, deeply believe, people will feel it. Belief is contagious. It spreads without needing to be explained. Sometimes we think that if we just get the facts right, if we explain ourselves clearly, people will understand us. But humans aren't wired for facts first. We're wired for feelings first. That's how trust is built. That's how alignment is created. And belief shared, belief is the gateway. It's not about crafting the perfect message. It's about standing in something true. People may not remember exactly what you said, but they'll remember how certain you were. They'll remember the conviction in your voice, the alignment between your words and your actions. That's what belief looks like. That's what draws people in. And belief doesn't have to be some grand, noble mission. It just has to be honest. Maybe you believe that everyone deserves a second chance, or that beauty should be accessible to everyone, or that people are capable of more than they think. These aren't titles. They're not roles. They're the deeper why that makes your work meaningful. So when you meet someone new, when you're given the chance to introduce yourself, consider this. Don't just tell them what you do. Tell them what you believe, because belief invites connection. It sparks curiosity. It gives people a reason to care, not just about your work, but about you. Because in the end, people don't follow what you do. They follow what you believe. We live in a world that moves fast. Everyone's eager to showcase what they're doing, where they're headed, and how successful they've become. Social media feeds are filled with polished snapshots of progress titles, achievements, updates, announcements. But somewhere in the middle of all this broadcasting, we've forgotten something essential: the power of listening. See, when you meet someone and immediately jump into telling them what you do, you're starting with yourself. And while it might seem harmless and efficient, it unintentionally puts a wall between you and the other person. It says, "Here's my world. Step into it." But connection doesn't begin when we talk. Connection begins when we listen. Listening is one of the most underrated forms of communication. We tend to think of influence as speaking well, presenting clearly, articulating our ideas. But if you want to truly influence someone, if you want to earn their trust, you begin by understanding them first. And you can't understand people unless you're genuinely curious about them. That's the difference. Curiosity isn't a tactic, it's a mindset. It's choosing to be more interested in who the other person is than in proving who you are. When we approach conversations this way with curiosity, instead of self-promotion, we build bridges. We allow the other person to feel seen. And when people feel seen, they open up. That's when the real dialogue begins. That's when relationships begin. Too often, we enter a room trying to impress. We want to be memorable. So we talk about what we've done, what we're building, what we're aiming for. But what we forget is that the most memorable people aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make us feel like we matter. They're the ones who ask thoughtful questions, who remember details, who make us feel like our words had weight. That's the impact of presence. And presence begins with listening. If you've ever had a conversation where someone was truly listening to you, not waiting for their turn to speak, not distracted, not checking their phone, you know how rare and powerful that is. You walk away from that moment not just liking the other person, but feeling somehow lighter, more seen, more human. That's the kind of presence we should all strive to bring into our interaction. It also changes how people perceive your value. Because when you listen deeply, when you seek to understand before being understood, people begin to trust you not because you're loud, but because you're thoughtful. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether personal or professional. Now, this doesn't mean you never talk about what you do. Of course, there's a time and place for that. But it means you wait. You let people get curious first. You let the conversation unfold. You make space. And in that space, something beautiful happens. People begin to ask. They lean in. They want to know more. And when someone wants to hear what you do, they're ready to receive it with attention, not just politeness. The most compelling conversations aren't monologues. They're explorations. They're built like good jazz and interplay of listening, responding, building on each other's notes. That requires humility. It requires patience. But most of all, it requires the courage to put connection above control. We're not here to impress the world with our resumes. We're here to make people feel something. And people don't feel connected when they're being pitched. They feel connected when they're being understood. That's how you build trust. That's how you build influence. Not by leading with your answers, but by starting with your questions. So the next time someone asks what you do, try this. Instead of answering right away, turn the question around. Ask them what excites them right now, what they're curious about, what's been on their mind lately. Watch how the energy shifts. Watch how the conversation deepens. And when the time comes to share your story, they'll not only be ready to hear it, they'll actually care. Because the people who make the biggest impact aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who listen the best.